Hello everybody and welcome back. And before we actually continue with this program, I just want to correct myself because in the previous video I just watched the ending of the video and I was referring to this request performer as an actual function. It is not a function, it is an actual class that we're going to create right now, which will have a function in it that is going to run the brute forcing itself. So I didn't actually explain myself really well in the previous video. Once again, it is a class, not a function. So let us continue coding it. These are just the self arguments that the actual class will take and that the run function will actually use in order to perform the brute forcing. Now you will see just in a second what I'm talking about. Let us go up here and we can code it right here, for example. So let us name it the same. So class request underscore performer, and make sure that this actual class right here doesn't take an input of these fields right here. These are just the variables or the arguments that we are going to pass to the init function in the class request performer. What this request performer will take as an input is the thread itself. So let me just show you right here. Thread request underscore performer. And basically, first thing you need to code in every actual class is the init function, which will take, where you will actually define your different variables. So def underscore underscore init underscore underscore. It will take an argument of self, which is a usual for the classes in Python, name, user, URL, and method. Let me just check if those are the four that we specified right here. Username, password, URL, method. Yeah, those are the exact four that we specified. And what we want to do right now is actually define these variables or self variables with the actual variables themselves. But before we do that, we need to create a thread object in it with the actual self in the bracket specified. So init and then self. And then afterwards we can proceed to the self.password equals name.split. Let me just go right here to actually split it by the new line character and take the first element of that, which will be the password itself. As you can see, the name is the actual password, so we don't need to call it name, we can just call it password. Or pass, doesn't really matter. Okay, let's call it pass WD because pass is already defined actual function in the Python itself. So we'll just use this pass WD dot split. We'll take the first element, which is going to be the password itself. Self.username will be equal to the user specified. Self.url can be equal to the URL itself. So self.url equals URL. The method will also be equal to the method, and we can print which password are we currently trying. So we can just do something like this, self.password, and we can add the actual another dash right here. This is just going to print the current password that we are going to try. And now we are doing the main part of the program itself, which is the run function. Now this run function, as I said before, is going to check for the actual methods, and if the method is basic, it will perform the basic request for the basic authentication, and if the method is digest or specified as digest, will perform the HTTP digest authentication with the request library. Now it is rather simple, so don't really worry. It is nothing really to worry about. Def run. Every function in the class has to take a self object, so we can actually parse these different variables to the function in the class. We will right here use the global hit variable, which we coded at the beginning of the program itself, which is currently set to 1. And right now what we're going to do is, first of all, we will check whether it is still set to 1. So if hit or our flag is set to be equal to 1, we'll try to actually take the method itself, whether it is a basic or the digest authentication. So what we will try is we will do something like this. So if self.method equals to basic, we are going to do r equals requests.get. And what we are going to specify in these brackets right here is the URL, of course, since we need to actually type here which URL are we going to visit and get the response from. And we need to specify the authentication, which will take the arguments of the username and the password. So self.url, not comma, self.url, and then comma, auth will be the authentication, then open and close another brackets, and here specify the username and the password. So self.username, comma, self.password. So right here, this is all set to go. Let me just double check everything. So we specify the URL, we specify username and password, and then we can proceed. Else if self.method is equal to the digest method, then we want to actually perform r equals requests.get on the same URL, but this time the actual authentication will be equal to HTTP digest auth. So we're using this type of authentication, which also takes two different arguments, which is just the username, so self.username, and the password itself. Password. Make sure to close another bracket at the end of this statement. And what we are going to do is we are going to check right now for the actual status code of the page that we actually load afterwards. Now what this means, if we get a status code of 200, that means that we found the password. What we will do is we will set the hit variable or flag to be equal to 0, and that will close our program. We will print the password, of course, before we actually close the program. And in case the status code is not equal to 200, and basically, as I said before, the status code 200 means that we successfully loaded the page. So if the status code is not equal to 200, we will continue to the next password, and we will actually remove the thread from our counter, which is in the launcher threads function right here. And our counter is basically this iList right here, which is containing different threads. Or not containing, it's actually keeping track of those threads. We will just remove one from this list right here, so we can actually keep a good track of it. And let us see how we can actually implement all of that. So first of all, as I said, let us go right here. We want to check for the status code. Now we made a request, or the r variable to contain the response from this request. So if r.status_code, which is an actual thing that we can check with the request library, equals to 200, we can set the hit to be equal to 0, and we can print then, so print like this, password found, and then dash, and then the double quotes plus self.password, which will print the current password that got the status code of 200. And after we print it, we can close the actual program with sys.exit. In any other case, which will be the case that we get any other status code, we will just print not valid password, 2 dots, space, and then we will add plus self.password. And make sure to not quit it right here. You want to, before we actually continue to the next password, we want to remove the thread from the actual counter, which we can do with this statement right here, -1, which will just remove the actual, which will just perform the subtraction from our actual list, or the first element of our list, removing the thread itself. Now make sure that before we actually close this program and wrap it up, that we actually run the except rule as well. So we try this, and if that doesn't work for some reason, we will accept any error, so accept exception E. We can print that error to see what that error is about. So this is basically the main part of our program. What we will do in the next video is we will just actually define this usage function. Let me just see, where did we put it? I believe it is somewhere right here. We check for the arguments. Okay, so here it is. We will actually define this usage function, which we still don't have. It is just printing some string statements, how to use this program, and so on and so on. And then I will show you how fast this program can actually brute force. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!